Awesome. Kia ora, everybody. Yeah, kia ora, everybody. I'm sitting here with Joseph Peter. He's from Hard Yards Hunting, and if you're familiar with my podcast, back a few episodes, I interviewed the legends from Modern Huntsman, which they do the most amazing publication, and they've brought out volume 2. And they've also got a website that shoots videos. And one of their regular contributors, Pace Brothers, came to New Zealand a few months back and viewed Joseph doing what he does best, made a film, and they were set to release that. And about the same time, all this furore about Tahr's come up, and of course the film was about hunting Tahr, and it's now taken on a massive significance. But before we get into that, Joseph, what have you been doing this weekend, mate? You're based in the tropical Twizel.
Tropical Twizel. This weekend I've actually just come back from the garage. I've been making some bullets.
Yeah.
Supposed to be getting prepared. I'm heading over to Kazakhstan in 12 days on an ibex hunt. So I'm supposed to be getting prepared for that and get some ammo ready and finalising my gear. But the last couple of weeks have been pretty hectic, to say the least. I think everyone involved in the hunting community in New Zealand has been pretty scrambled, especially the commercial guys and a lot of recreational guys as well. What the Conservation Minister Sage has come out with has given us all a bit of a kick up the arse, which in some ways is good. It's pulled a lot of hunting groups together, got a lot of unity going on, and everyone's on the same page about what we want to try and achieve. So we've been doing a lot of scribbling on paper and phone calls and sending emails and trying to get things to happen. Getting there, I think. A bit changing. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So, who is Joseph Peter today, mate? Who are you?
Who am I? So I work as a hunting guide for half a year. I run my own outfit, Hard Yards Hunting. I started working as a hunting guide. I was about 16 or 17 with my uncle Bernard. He started the Hard Yards Hunting sort of image, I suppose, and I took that on. We've shifted our focus in the guiding industry towards the adventure, the wilderness, the hunting aspect, not so much the shooting critters and putting them on the wall. That's kind of been our focus over the last couple of years. I've been trying to change the way that sort of New Zealand is viewed in some ways in terms of the guiding industry. The guiding industry in New Zealand has been heavily focused on the high-end lodge and the high-fence red stag. That's been a big part of the market here. There's a number of reasons for that, but I think a lot of the clientele and the hunting industry itself overlooks what is more important, and that is in my mind anyway, the hunt and the adventure and the experience, not just trophy. So I think we've got to kind of have a bit of balance in the industry. We've got to try and provide a bit of both.
Absolutely, I think in my sphere and something that's sort of bringing about a greater awareness and interest in hunting is coming from guys like you Joe Rogan, who I saw something the other day that he's basically the male's version of Oprah, and guys that he has on like Cameron Haynes and Adam Greentree, and even Nick Morton, who owns Ozcut broadheads in Australia. The real key point that they're putting across is this is not about what the end result is. It's about this adventure. And a couple of years back, I wrote about a raw hunt that a mate and myself went on in the Blue River, and we didn't see a thing. But going 18 kilometres into the wilderness was just super amazing, even if it was to sit in a tent for 24 hours and get rained on. But what do you think makes it so appealing to go the hard yards, mate?
I don't know. It's just the experience, the adventure. I think once you leave sort of modern world, it takes you a day to kind of relax and forget about the internet, forget about your phone, forget about all the other shit that you've got to do, and then you actually wake up and you can look around and go, oh, there's birds flying around, and oh, this is actually what nature's about. And I think as our lives have become more technologically advanced, I suppose, we've got further and further away from that. And for the average Joe Blog who lives in the city and he works his 9 to 5, he's lost that connection completely. And it's a way to get back to nature and back to what humans are about. This is what we're supposed to be part of nature. We're not supposed to be visitors. We're not supposed to go there on the weekend. We're actually supposed to be part of the system, and we've kind of missed that. It's only going to get worse, I think.
Yeah, mate. when we were in that Blue River Valley, we were too scared to get up the mountains, and I was watching that Pace Brothers video, and you're on this steep as hell face looking across at another one. And I think you even make the comment when you're looking at a Tahr that this is a spot for Tahr, not for people. How do you and how do the clients, get over that hump and get there? And I suppose that's where you become such an important role in their adventure and their expedition.
Yeah, everyone has their limit, and everyone has their comfort zone. What for me is a steep mountain might be unreal for someone else. It might not be that steep for someone else. And part of being a good guide is being able to read your clients, not just during the hunt, but leading up to the hunt. We try and do a few, quite extensive emails and do a few phone calls with guys and try and figure out, what does this guy or woman want from this hunt? Where are they at in their own hunting career or their own physical ability? And you want to push people a little bit, but you don't want to scare people, and you don't want to make their lives miserable, but you want to have a bit of challenge involved. And that's something that every year you have to look back on your season and go, right, that decision was the wrong decision because we ended up in a shitty spot, or maybe we crossed the line there. There's a fine line in mountain hunting, especially animals like Tahr. You can get yourselves into a bit of a pickle if you push yourself a bit too much. And I think it's something that just takes experience. It takes, hundreds of days in the mountains to look at a face and go, all right, I can get up that gut, go across that ridge, and that's safe. Or you better just to sit there and look at it and go, I'm not even going to bother. I'll just sit here and wait and see what happens.
Nice. You also make the comment that you're only a visitor in their habitat.
Yeah.
You don't want to stay there.
Yeah. It would be nice to be able to live in Tahr country, but most of us aren't really tough enough to do that, myself included. It's a pretty harsh environment, especially on the west coast. I think we underestimate how tough animals are, even deer to rabbits to whatever. You go outside with no gear and sleep on your lawn and see how you get on, let alone in the mountains. I think we don't have as much respect as we probably should for how tough wild animals are, really, how they exist.
So you mentioned you're about to go on a trip to Kazakhstan. What's your prep been like for that, man?
It hasn't been very good. I've been quite sick over the last couple of months, and my fitness isn't very good. I've done a little bit of shooting, but I'm hoping I have a good horse that's going to pull me up the mountain. So I had a guy called Kazim. He hunted with me back in May, and he's from a company called Pro Hunt Kazakh. He came and did a Tahr and chamois hunt with me and kind of teed up a bit of a deal there. And I'm going over with my uncle Bernard, who started hard yards hunting, mid-Asian ibex, on 9 days hunting. I think we're going to be pretty close to the Chinese border, and it should be a pretty good experience. As a guide, it's quite good to put yourselves in the client's shoes every now and then. You learn a lot being on the other end of the stick. As a guide, you're always trying to make the right decisions, whereas a client, a lot of the time, it'd be hard to just be a passenger. I know I haven't done a lot of international hunts or a lot of guided hunts. I've worked with other guides, You have to sit back and go, this is their domain, they know what they're doing, and you just have to trust them. Just going to do what these guys say because this is their job. That can be quite difficult, especially if you've guided yourself or if you are an experienced hunter. Think, oh, this is what we should be doing. And I try to be open and honest with my clients, and usually I'll have a plan, they'll have a plan, and we might cut it somewhere in the middle and take a bit from both plans and make a better plan. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the hunt's going to be like. The mid-Asian ibex, for a lot of mountain hunters, is the proper king of the mountains. We think of the Tahr as the king of the mountains. Ibex, in terms of the trophy, if you want to call it, they've got a lot more going on. They're pretty impressive forms. Live in some pretty cool terrain. So pretty looking forward to that now. It's starting to become real.
Absolutely, and you say it's interesting being guided. One of the probably best NZ Hunter episodes in their last season was when Willie was over in Austria to visit Swarovski, but then they took him out into the mountains for a chamois, and he spotted the ibex, and you just see his eyes, go on stalks. But yeah, also his decision making around what he thought was a suitable animal and what the guys thought. I thought it was really interesting, and of course the different customs for each country, like they had to get off the mountain before dark, and you can't shoot this one or else you pretty much go to jail. And
yeah, especially in Europe, Kiwis and Australians are similar as well. With our hunting culture is defined by our own decisions, not by any laws.
Yeah,
more or less do what you want, really. Whereas in most of Europe, you have a pretty strict set of laws and customs as well that you have to follow. And the same in North America, you've got a lot of laws that you've got to follow. And I think for a lot of Kiwis, when they go on international hunts, they struggle with that a little bit because we're used to just, it doesn't matter, I'll just shoot that one and who cares, or, it's dark, we'll just shoot that one anyway. We don't have legal shooting right, we don't have limits on what we can shoot, or they have to be a certain size or anything like that. So that can be a little tricky when you first into, I suppose, regulated hunting. For a lot of Kiwis and Aussies, it's something quite foreign to us.
Absolutely. I guess that takes us into the Tahr, and what people are sort of hoping for is that they become a herd of special interest. The only real precedent we've got here is the Fiordland Wapiti. And I was listening to Greg Dooley talk to some of the pace brothers and basically saying the management of them is kind of outside the law, but it works.
Yeah.
And so what putting them in a case of a special interest herd means that it takes them out of the Wild Animal Control Act and removes that label of pest, which I'm on Twitter and it's got the reputation for being a little bit left-leaning, and there's plenty of forest and bird and Labour and Green supporters on there. If you went by them, and I guess the Minister Eugenie Sage yourself, you'd get rid of everything that has a hoof and a guts, and it'd just be birds and jungle.
Yeah, it's a good, on paper, I get it, and I can get where they're coming from with predator-free 2050 and the idea of restoring New Zealand to its former glory, if you want to call it that. The reality is that it's too far gone. We like to look and go, this is the natural habitat, but there's nowhere in New Zealand that is natural. There's been so many species lost and so much change to, especially the eastern side of the South Island. All the country's been changed. It's either been deforested or burnt or worked up and replanted, oversown, and we don't know what New Zealand was like in pre-human times. Even when the white man turned up here, it was very different to what it was, before the Maori arrived. And I think we have to recognise the situation and accept what we've got now. Go, right, it's not perfect, but this is what it is. And killing Tahr's not going to bring the moa back, and killing all the introduced animals is not going to bring back the extinct species that we've lost. That's not how it works. So So I think we have to kind of give up on that mentality. I don't think it's practically possible, in terms of actually getting the job done and economically viable in terms of the cost it would take and damage to other industries, not just the hunting industry, things like the farming industry. It's going to be massive flow-on effects if we keep going down that path of trying to eliminate all these species. The predator-free 2050 it sounds good, but Eugenie Sage is listening, go and kill all the rats that live on the street. See how you can do that, but you can't even kill the rats that live in your own house, let alone the whole country. The idea behind it it's just ridiculous, really, when you try and put it into a real world landscape. It's so hard to get that job done.
Yeah, I've sort of heard it put to me that the pest-free models that we've got are very good for small, isolated subantarctic islands, but when you've got a landmass, which New Zealand's not large, but compared to a isolated subantarctic island, we've got a lot of confounding factors going on instead of isolation. And whilst it works to some extent, there's always other factors that are going to inhibit the goal. And I guess you nearly touched on it there, that what they're looking at in terms of kill the Tahr is not going to get the desired outcome, and that should be more what they measure. And this is what Greg was talking about. If you're wanting the lilies to be at a certain number, if you're wanting the certain grasses to be at a certain level, and you're wanting to hear certain bird song in certain areas, surely look at that, and then look at the other confounding factors and do something about those based on that, rather than, if we've got no Tahr, then we should get this result. And even if that's not the case.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think it's easy to think killing introduced animals saves natives, but it's not always the case. In some cases with stoats and predators, it's a pretty direct relationship. But with the situation with Tahr, there's chamois and there's red deer living within their range as well, and there's a lot of other factors going on. It's not as simple as I'm just going to shoot Tahr and it's going to be better. I think we need to think about it a lot more than that. And the way that Eugene has pushed to current control, it's based purely on a number of dead Tahr. That's how they're going to measure their success. It's not based on biodiversity. It's not based on vegetation health. It's just based on dead Tahr, which is more or less pointless figure. What has that got to do with vegetation health? We need to get to the plants and have a look at them, not look at the Tahr.
Yeah, and it was interesting. Hunters Club had an image of them in a valley that was covered in Mount Cook lilies and covered in Tahr, and they're like, "Oh, what's going on here?" But animals eat, flowering and rank grasses, and that allows for them to come away. You said you've got a background in farming, and the best way to keep grasses growing is to graze them.
Yeah, there's a point. You can definitely overdo it, but especially in the case of grasses, if you look up the definition of what is a grass, the evolutionary pathway to them is they're designed to be eaten or cut or chewed down, and that is how grass works. Some of the other plants, like the Mount Cook lilies and that group of plants, they're a lot more sensitive, and you have to be a bit more careful with them. But I think there's a big lack in recent research. All the data we have on Tahr grazing is from the 70s, the 80s, and it's pretty outdated. Densities and other animals within the habitat. If you go back to the start of the deer wars, within the Tahr range, there was a high number of Tahr and a high number of deer and a high number of chamois. So vegetation was getting hammered from all angles. Now, deer population, it's definitely building up. It's getting higher, but it's nothing like it was. Especially within the Tahr range, it's not that high at all. And a lot of the chamois population has moved out of the Tahr range in a lot of places, and the chamois densities are pretty low at the moment, I think, across the Tahr range.
And you're saying about how a lot of this data is pretty old, and some of the figures that I've been hearing is they've gone with 35,000 Tahr in the country, but it could be 17,000, could be 54,000. Although I'm sure a few people that actually get up there and out there would argue there's not 54,000 Tahr running around, but there are too many, and all of those numbers are above the, plucked out of the year 10,000 figure. But
yeah,
what in your sort of areas that you go hunting in, what do you sort of see, one, about numbers, and then two, about quality?
I think numbers are really hard to put a figure on, especially with hunting. You imagine a week-long hunt, you see a lot of the same animals over that week, so it's hard to count those out. There's definitely areas where there is too many Tahr, you would say. Across the range, the number is probably close to 30,000, something like that. I don't know. It's pretty hard to figure that out, and you should really sit down with a notebook and work it out. But the problem with the data that they've done is it's been based on an aerial survey. So they've flown around the helicopter, flown over these plots, and had a 2 kilometre square plot, counted all the animals. They do that a couple of times and extrapolate that data across the range. And the problem with the aerial survey is that in the open country, on the East Coast, units where they've proposed the most of their culling, units 1 and 3, I think, in those areas, you're likely to overestimate the Tahr population with an aerial survey. And the areas on the West Coast where there's a lot of scrub animals and a lot of animals living in and around the bush, you're going to underestimate the population. So I think they've got that around the wrong way. And then in terms of what are those animals doing in terms of damage, I think on the East Coast, a lot of the country is dominantly tussock, and Tahr diet is about 70 or 80% tussock at least. So in those areas, they're just eating the tussock, they don't eat much else. There's not really any damage to the environment, from my experience anyway. Then there's areas on the West Coast where there definitely is damage happening. And these are normally scrubby faces where there isn't tussock, there isn't big tussock faces, so the Tahr are feeding on the flax, they're feeding on dracophyllums, they're feeding on all of these little subalpine, what we like to call monkey scrub, and then all the smaller plants that make up that, that vegetation. And that is where most of the damage is happening. And if you talk to the Department of Conservation, the guys that do the Tahr control, they know that. They know the areas that need tune up. But the proposed plan from Sage has not taken any of that into account. It's just focused on shooting the maximum number of Tahr per dollar, and you go to the easiest open country, East Coast areas, and just put into it. And it's not focused on protecting the habitat where it needs to be for people. So I think there's a big issue with the proposed plan in that aspect.
Yeah, nice. So there's a call in that plan to kill bulls. Now, what does that mean for you and people like you, who are looking to sell a trophy?
It's pretty frustrating. There has been a, I suppose, gentleman's agreement for a long time between the department and hunter groups, both recreational and commercial, that the control is going to be focused on nannies. And from all points in terms of value for money on control and actually reducing the population, shooting nannies makes the biggest impact. And in terms of vegetation damage, nannies live in a small area. Bulls, they have a summer and a winter range. They wander around a lot. They don't live in high density. So on that aspect as well, it doesn't make any sense to shoot bulls. What Sage has proposed, she's saying 30% of 10,000 Tahr are bulls, whereas Ken Tustin's data, and most of us would say that that's about 10 or 11% in terms of identifiable bulls. That's 3 or 4 years old plus, And then of that, trophy quality bulls are only going to be 2 or 3%. So the 3,000 bulls that they're proposing to shoot is likely to be the whole amount of bulls we have out of 35,000 Tahr. It's only going to be 3,000 or 4,000 bulls. Shooting that many will have a massive impact on not only the commercial industry but recreational hunters. And for the department to get recreational hunters on board, both myself, my clients, and Joe Blogs down the street, we predominantly hunt Tahr for bulls, but when we're there, we shoot nannies. But to get us up on the hill just to shoot nannies when there's no prize at the end, there's no, oh, I might see a big bull, a lot of hunters are not going to go. And long term, the department needs recreational hunters to pick up the act and to be controlling the Tahr. Removing that incentive of bulls more or less destroys a huge number of hunters and why they would go Tahr hunting. There'll be plenty of people, if that happens, plenty of people will go, what's the point? There's no bulls out there, why am I going to go hunting? And then the problem's going to get worse. 10 years down the track, the population will bring back up again.
Yeah, absolutely. That expedition I was telling about in the Blue River found out that most of that area gets a good clean up from the Waro boys and around about February. So April and May aren't much good to you, mate. It's been absolutely awesome to get your perspective on this, and it's been something that I've been trying to track somebody down for since the news came out, mate. Where do people find the little short clip, and where can people follow your journey, and especially this Kazakhstan hunt? It'll be amazing to check in with you and see how things go. Where do people find you?
So we're Hard Yards Hunting. We have our website, hardyardshunting.co.nz, and Hard Yards Hunting on Facebook and Instagram. The Modern Huntsman is what you want to get on board to see how we film. And the Modern Huntsman is putting out their second print edition. I wouldn't call it a magazine, but it's not a book, it's something else. You've got one there. It's
bloody beautiful.
It's kind of moving the hunting, the image of hunting, forward, but maybe sideways, or trying to present hunting in a way that is more acceptable to the non-hunting audience. I think that's quite important as hunting becomes under a lot of pressure. So their second edition of that book, you call it, is coming out next month, and you can pre-order that on their website, Modern Huntsman. There's quite a lot of discussion around public land use. There's going to be quite a few more photos in there from Byron and our hunt. So good to have a look at that. And the Tahr Foundation Facebook page is the best place to keep up to date with what's happening with Tahr. There's supposed to be a meeting tomorrow with Eugenie Sage and Game Animal Council. She's going to be pretty tough to work with, I think. I think it's going to end up in court. We're probably not going to see the Game Animal Council's plan carried through, and we're probably not going to see Sage's plan carried through. It's going to be somewhere in between. But what exactly is going to happen is still up in the air.
Yeah, and I saw she was at the Seeker show yesterday in Tahr, and by all accounts, so far I've seen she didn't get egged, but there was some frank discussion and a few of the comments on from the guys at NZ Hunter and the Seeker show and the Tahr Foundation. A few people expressed their concerns with her on the Facebook, and hopefully that didn't follow through at the Seeker show and people were civil. But yeah, mate. And of course on that Tahr Foundation, people can donate to the Give a Little. I think it's pushing over 100,000. That just shows how passionate people are about this.
It's on about 153,000, I think now.
Awesome. And so, on that note, what's something you'd like to leave people with from a perception of hunting, and also, learning a little bit more before you go ahead and say, "I'll kill the pests."
I think for the hunters out there, we have to do our part in terms of presenting hunting as a more rounded activity. You can't just focus on killing critters and sticking them on the wall or sticking them in the oven. Either way, there has to be a whole story behind it. And for the non-hunters out there, if you've never been hunting and you're thinking, what's all this hunting about? Ask someone, find a hunting group, sign up, go on a hunt, and I can guarantee you it'll be different than what you think it's going to be. And I think as we move forward, people need to be open with their views, but not shutting down someone else's views. We need to be accepting of people's choices. If someone chooses to go hunting, that's their choice. You shouldn't jump on top of them. And in the case of New Zealand and Australia, where you've got introduced animals, it's going to be very tricky to manage them in a way that both protects natives and has a population that's maybe there to hunt, or maybe that population just exists to protect the species. In the case of Tahr, it's a internationally important species, and to destroy them because they're introduced is not fair on Tahr and their native range, or not fair on them as a species. And I think we need to just kind of slow down a little bit, take our time and work through the system. And it's the same in Australia. There's a growing sort of trend, I think, with the Samba herd at the moment to try and reduce it pretty hard. And you have to sit back and go, is this really the right thing to do? Are there better methods? Are there better ways to get the local hunting guys involved? How can we make this benefit both parties? I think that needs to happen. Everyone needs to work together to get a solution.
Awesome, mate. Thank you very, very much. And hopefully you get a little bit better before your big hunt. Thanks so much.
I hope so. Thank you very much.
Cheers, mate.